In this video, I'd like to talk about the basic steps that you'll need to go through to grow plants from cuttings. This video will apply to all the easy to root species like currants, elderberries, and willows. The place that you want to grow out your cuttings doesn't need to be any place special. This is a garden bed that I tilled last year, and I would recommend either tilling or broad forking a bed before you put your cuttings in, simply because it'll make putting the cuttings in a lot easier to do physically. Then you need your cuttings. These are pink currant cuttings that I harvested recently. One important note here is that you want to keep the orientation of the cuttings the same as how they came off the plant. So the bottom of the cutting is closer to the stem and the top of the cutting is closer to the tip. You may have to pay attention at first, but after a while, the look of the cutting orienting the right way will become intuitive and you'll get it right every time. Now, all you have to do is stick your cutting into the ground. Nothing special here. Just stick it in about as far as you can, and I would call this one perfect. It's got a couple buds above the ground, and the rest of the cutting is below the ground. Some people say 2/3 below, 1/3 above, and that's a pretty good rule to follow. I personally like to use a ruler to be able to lay out my cutting beds evenly, but you certainly don't have to. A good spacing for currants is 4 to 6 inches. A good spacing for elderberries and willows is 6 inches. Now I'll go through and put the rest of the cuttings into this bed. It's as simple as sticking the cuttings in at the spacing that you want. If you have any cuttings that are sticking out a little bit more than you'd like, and you can't get them into the soil any deeper, it's perfectly fine to cut them down a little bit. So this one has 4 buds above ground. I think 1 to maybe 3, probably 2 is better. So I'm just going to cut this one down. I definitely recommend mulching your cutting beds. I like to use wood chips, but anything will work. The covering of mulch can be light at first, and you can increase it as the season goes on if you'd like. The mulch will help to prevent moisture loss from the soil. Cuttings definitely need water, so it can be helpful to water at first, but roots really form in the air with the help of water, and not the other way around. So don't overwater your cuttings, but remember that at first, the cuttings don't have their own root system, so a little bit of supplemental watering will definitely help. I like to just sprinkle wood chips out of a 5-gallon bucket onto my cuttings beds. That's good. I definitely recommend putting a tag on your cuttings. If you do a lot of different varieties, or if a variety or plant is new to you, you don't want to forget what you planted. So I just put a tag on there. I like to put a rock on top of my tags too for a bit of extra security. And these cuttings are all set to grow out for the season here. One other important note, with cuttings in their first year, you really want to emphasize root growth and then shoot formation. So, when the cuttings start leafing out, if you see flowers blooming, it's really best to go through and either pinch those with your fingernails and pinch them right off, or cut them off with pruners. That way the cuttings won't be putting extra energy into those very intensive activities such as flowering, fruiting, and setting seed. This is a 1-year-old pink currant. It's the exact same variety as the one I was just showing earlier. So if everything goes well with growing out the cuttings in your first year, you could easily expect to have a really nice plant like this at the end of the season. So good luck out there, and let me know if you have any questions.